somewhere in my possession, I think I have a Bluetooth cassette thingy. And I think it might be in here. From when I had the factory stereo installed. Not related to anything that we're talking about today, but I would like to put my hands on that stupid thing. Is it in here? No, it's not in here. Here. No, not in there. What about behind here? What did I find? A leaf? In here, maybe? What's this? What's in here? Oh, Amelia, you're killing me. That's how we get mice. Ugh. In here? Oh, that's something else. Darn. Well, I don't think I actually own a cassette converter to Bluetooth. Thing is, I remember buying one for the Miata, and I think I used it once, and I think I returned it because I wasn't happy with it. But pretty sure I didn't. It boggles my mind. I don't know what happened to it. Do you? It kind of reminds me of the time when I was a kid, and I was probably maybe 4 years old, and I remember when I was little, and I know this, I had a little toy car with a key in the back, the wind-up car. Now, this was in the 1980s. This wouldn't have been an original, authentic antique or nothing, but I remember I had one. It was a Volkswagen Beetle. And I searched my grandparents' house high and low for years. Till I was about, it seemed like years. It was probably more like a month. But I remember being at their house. I was there all the time, looking through cabinets and cubbies and every possible place that this toy car could be. I could never find it. And that was the last place I saw it. Oh, I'm thinking one of my uncles must have scoffed it up, played with it, broke it, and threw it away. Yeah. Kind of like the time my grandmother said I could have her portable TV. She had one of those, it was a Bentley portable TV. You must have seen these. You see them at Goodwill not Goodwill, but Sabres. I see them all the time now. Little black and white TV. It's got 4 little knobs on one side and a black and white tube. Well, my grandmother had one. It ran off like 27 D cells and for like 20 minutes. Anyway, she had one of these. And I remember her saying I could have it if I could find it. And I was probably 12. And at the time, I wanted a portable TV in the worst way. And I was like drooling over the portable TVs they sold at Radio Shack back at the time. And she said, "Oh yeah, you can have it if you can find it." I'm like, that's a challenge, isn't it? And sure enough, the thing didn't exist. My grandfather likely threw it away, years prior. So I searched high, I searched low. There was no TV to be found. It didn't exist. Finding stuff that doesn't exist. That having been said, I have to get booking on this project because I have another one coming tomorrow. See, I just struck a deal with a gentleman not too far from here. He was selling a PC that I have been looking for a long time. It's not the PC that I've been looking for, but it is damn close to it. We're talking one model revision off, but same specs as the PC I had when I first signed up with AOL in 1997. It was my very first internet-ready PC. Now, I'll tell you the story when that comes, but we need to get working on this. What I want to do, I have some parts on order. I've got this cap. Like I said in my last video, we talked about, was it stairway repairs? I know something. So I was doing some stairwell repairs. Where's my freaking tripod? Don't tell me that doesn't exist. Hold on, I know where it is. Seriously, is that cassette adapter in here? By the way, if anyone's in New England, New Hampshire preferably, and you want yourself a nice IBM Selectric, hit me up. I'll make a deal. You can't refuse the deal I make you. And if you do, you don't want the damn thing in the first place. Well, I guess I don't have the adapter. I thought I bought one. I'm gonna check. I think I bought it on eBay. I'm gonna check my purchase records and see if it's there. Well, by the way, I'm doing some insulation. Yeah, time to insulate these floors. They're freaking cold. So I gotta do something about that. I might even wrap that return duct in insulation. I might get some insulating blankets for the... I'm gonna go all out. We are losing so many BTUs to the outside air. It's sad. It's really sad. Because oil's not cheap. No. Where's my tripod? Oh, it's right there. Some guy suggested on YouTube, and it's I wanted to bring this up. Sorry to I'm gonna bounce all over the place here. When I replaced my stair treads, I opted to replace them rather than try to reuse them and flip them. Let me show you what I mean. So you got a stair tread here, right? Let's pretend the bottom one. Let's pretend it's the bottom one that we're talking about. And there's a big chip right here, a gouge. Well, what you can do is you can remove the stair tread carefully, flip it around, and put the gouged edge at the bottom rear of the step, and no one would ever know. You just clean it up, paint it, and you're done. Now, let me show you why I didn't do that. So this one right here is the bottom stair tread, and it cracked in half as soon as I took it off. I couldn't get it off in one piece because it was stuck behind that support. This one also had a notch on the side, and I can't flip that notch out, you know what I'm saying? That notch is going to be there. That's why I replaced it. This one here had a nasty crack on the front, and in order to reuse this step, oh, not only that, but the broken piece is on the front, but it goes all the way through. So there's no hiding that. Put it in this way, backwards, upside down, and you're going to have that chip right there, that busted missing piece. So that one's no good. This one here is a possible candidate for reuse. But if you notice, right here, you've got part of the bark still on the damn thing. So they kind of screwed me on this. And it's also damaged here too. Although that could be from me removing it too. But it does have this going on, which I can't hide that. It's got a giant knot in it. And that knot, the small side is on this side. Big side is on this side. Come on, you guys are smarter. You know what I'm going at here. That knot could be pressed out. If you hit it just right with your heel, you'll break it out of the board. So that is why I didn't reuse these boards. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I might rip them down and use them as like strapping or something. I don't want to waste anything, really. Alright, subject at hand, the SX. Alright, so I've got some stuff on order for this thing. What I have is this cap right here. And I'm going to try, in this video, we're going to try to remove what's left of it. Somebody glued it in place, and I think that that was a homegrown repair. I don't think it came from the factory that way. And that's unfortunate. But we will rebuild. Okay. Let's see what we can do. This is going to be tricky because that glue, the reason or how this glue works is it actually bonds with the plastic. It melts it together and doesn't always come off cleanly or at all. So this may not be possible. I'm not going to judge anyone for doing what they did. I mean, they glued it on because it fell off, and you know, that's what you do. You just make it work. And there was a time when these were worth nothing. But right now, the SX64s are worth a little bit of money. Not a lot, but they're worth something. So we want to try to make this as nice of a cosmetic repair as we can. I still haven't... so I've ordered a new cap, obviously, but I've also ordered the that was good. I'm using the rubber end of my screwdriver as to not provide any shocking. Yeah, doing this. Ooh. This might be metal. I think that's metal. That's actually a good sign, you know. If that's metal, we might have a chance in hell. Yes. Yes, I think we do. If it's cast aluminum, yeah, we can definitely do this without really causing a whole lot of damage. Because, yes, yes, I like. Look at that. So I think we'll be alright. It's just going to take some of the paint off on the inside. And that's not too bad. So, nice, very nice. Okay, so it's just going to chip it off. Now, if this were plastic, I'm not sure there'd be any way to save it. So we're going to be replacing the PLA chip. That should be arriving hopefully this week, and crossing my fingers that that'll get it going. Unfortunately, this project PC that I've got coming is... oh, you guys are going to love it. I've had... I don't want to give away what it is, but if you follow me... if you follow a certain computer forum... one of the computer yard sale... vintage computer yard sale sites on... I'm sorry, pages on Facebook, if you follow that particular page, you're going to find out what it is. But it was a local transaction. See, when you're looking for a vintage computer, it almost always works out to where what you want is available for sale, but it's either in another country or it's, you know, a 5, 6, 7, 8,000 mile drive from where you live, and they won't ship. And this was one of those situations where I wasn't really looking, but I was on Bookface, and I just happened to see this post show up on one of the groups that I follow, and it was, I saw the post, and it was like somebody put it there for me. because it's exactly what I'm looking for if I were to buy another PC. Because remember, I've been kind of trying to thin the herd a bit. It's exactly what I would buy. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Somebody's selling exactly what I'm looking for. And then I look at, because I'm expecting it to be in Ohio or hell, California. And sure enough, just a couple towns away. Just a 20-minute drive from where I'm sitting right now. Now, folks, when you find a deal like that, you don't pass it. You just don't. The price, and the price was a little on the elevated side, but I was thinking, and I'm gonna repeat all of what I'm saying when you watch that video. So, the thing is, I priced out. If I have a good idea, I've been doing this hobby for a long time, longer than a lot of my viewers have been alive. I've been collecting vintage computers since before it was cool, and I happen to know that the parts in this machine alone, like some of the owner installed parts, the upgrades, are worth almost as much as I'm paying for the whole system. And I'm thinking, you don't turn that down. You don't turn. That's fate giving you. That's fate. Fate is telling you that. And I'm going to tell you what I paid, because I think what has to happen is there needs to be more transparency in this hobby as to what things are worth, and what people are willing to pay determines what things are worth. And that is how, because there's no price guide. There's no vintage computer price guide. There's no price guide for parts. It's what people are willing to pay. And one of the things about vintage computer collecting is that you're paying for nostalgia. There is no there is no value here. Okay. This SX64 is worth absolutely nothing. Nothing. It has no value. It is scrap. Okay? If it weren't for nostalgia, it would be scrap. Total useless garbage, because it serves no purpose. The device I carry around in my pocket has 3,000 times more computing power than this does. And hell, the infotainment system in my car is more powerful than this by a long shot. It has no value in the real world. So what you're paying for when you're buying a vintage computer is nostalgia. How much is it worth to you? And what drives the price up on vintage equipment is two things: scarcity and nostalgia. So what do I mean by nostalgia? Well, let's say you're watching a movie, an old movie, or even a new movie, and they happen to have a scene that's set in a particular time period, and you see a Commodore SX64. Or I believe in a more famous example, a real-life example, is this compact portable. I believe, if you watch the show Halt and Catch Fire, I believe there is a compact portable in that show. So then you start thinking, wow, that's a neat old computer. I wonder how much those cost. I wonder where I can find one. It's cool. Let's make it look. Let's open it up so you can see it. But you open it up. There we go. It looks pretty cool. It's definitely a relic from the 1980s. And you're thinking, wow, that's pretty cool. And then you go on eBay and you look for one. You find one. And they want $300 for it, plus shipping and handling. And you're thinking, gee, that's a little steep. But I really want one. That would look great in my office. So you're willing to pay $300 for it. And you buy it. You get it shipped to your house. And that is, to you, what that compact is worth. Okay? Because you saw it in a show. You thought it was cool. The main character used it and conquered the world with it. Now you've got one on your desk. It's a conversation piece. And if you grew up in the 1980s like I did, or 90s, you might remember having one as a kid. You know, let's say you didn't watch Halt and Catch Fire. Let's say your dad, who worked in the, let's say your dad or your mom, you know, worked in a job where they had to bring one of these home. And let's say you had one on your kitchen table and you actually wrote one of your first junior research papers on it or something like that. Or you wrote a dissertation on it because it was the only computer available to you, or whatever. Or you played Pango or Zaxxon on it because that was the only game that your mom or dad had that went on to this company-owned computer that was sitting in your dining room table in 1986. And nobody else in your neighborhood had access to a computer because nobody had computers in 1986. What the hell? So, 30, 35 years later, you remember playing Zaxxon on your mom or dad's borrowed compact portable PC. And then you're thinking back about all the good times you had. So you decide, I'd like to have one on my desk just to bring back the memories, or maybe share it with my kid. And so you go on eBay and you find a compact portable like that one, and you're like, cool, I'll pay whatever. I'll pay whatever they're asking, just shut up and take my money as long as it works. And that is what drives up the price of vintage PCs. I think vintage computer collecting, be it Apple, Commodore, IBM, whatever your flavor, it is the new radio hobby. For generations, men and women, mostly men, collected antique radios. For years, it was a very popular hobby. In fact, I own 2 of them myself, and 2 nicely restored examples. I have a. Of course, I had to think about that for a second. I've got a Philco 37640 from 1937, and I've got a 1936 Grunow 1291 teledial. And they're beautiful antiques, but they're not really relevant to me as a kid because I didn't grow up around antique radios. The radios that we had when I was a kid that I grew up around are actually collectible, believe it or not. But large boom boxes and stuff. But I'm digressing here. My point is this. Nostalgia sells, and nostalgia has value. But this piece of equipment right here is 100% just functionally obsolete. It's a fun conversation piece. It's a fun toy to learn and play with, but that's about it. But there's another thing that has really driven the appeal of vintage computer collecting, and that is the repairability aspect. This relic from the past, if you look at how it's constructed, these are all parts that I can pretty much buy anywhere. Resistors, capacitors, a couple of ICs here and there. These are all parts I can generally find if I look hard enough. And because the soldering is, skill level 1, I can make the repairs without actually having a lot of experience with a soldering iron. It's all through hole. It's pretty self-explanatory if you really think about how it's put together. Not really for me. I'm not an electronics whiz, but I do know how to operate a soldering iron, and I have some pretty decent equipment at work, so I will get this thing running. Although the fun thing is the repairs this doesn't need, turns out is a very common repair, and it doesn't require any soldering, at least not on this model. For me, the appeal of vintage computer collecting is maintaining originality and preserving history. And that is why I don't put solid states in my equipment. I will fight tooth and nail before I put a solid state disk in any of my machines. And a lot of my viewers seem to have a problem with that, and that's okay. It doesn't offend me at all. I get it. Hard disk drives are like, okay, so you've got the vintage computer in your possession. You bought the compact portable. You bought the SX. These don't have hard drives, but you bought the Macintosh LC3 of your dreams. Let's say you're like me and you grew up in the 90s, and one of the first Macs you ever touched was a Macintosh LC3. And let's say you turn it, you go out and you go on eBay, right? You find the machine and you're going to play Leisure Suit Larry. You're going to find the disc images. You're going to put Leisure Suit Larry on this thing. And you turn it on. You watch. This thing is going to fail on me. You turn the thing on. I can remember where the power switch is. And you hear the familiar whine, if you're lucky. You hear the whine of the hard disk drive. And you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you're waiting. And you get... This is the one time I hope it fails. And you get a flashing disk icon. Oh darn. Now what do I do? It's got a flashing disk icon. Well, you do some research and you find out that it needs a new hard drive. Well, that's no big deal. I'll just go to Best Buy and oh, wait a minute. They stopped making SCSI hard drives in the 90s, early 2000s, because Apple didn't use IDE, they used SCSI. And then you look online and you find out that SCSI hard drives are damn near impossible to find at any price. And it's really it's like playing poker, or not poker, but it's like playing a slot machine as to whether or not it'll work. Each time you buy one is a pull of the lever. Will it work? Will I win or will I lose? SCSI hard drives were fine when they were new, but you tack on 30 plus years of age and you've got essentially a ticking time bomb. Well, there's a solution for that. And that is a SCSI to CF or whatever adapter. I think there's a new product out actually that's probably better than the old ones were, but it allows you to basically replace your old SCSI hard drive with a solid-state storage device. And it used to be CF cards, compact flash, but I think they use SD cards now. Well, here's the thing. That is a great solution for the right person. My interest in vintage computers isn't just making it work, whatever. I just want it to work, you know. I just want to play Leisure Suit Larry. Well, if I wanted to play Leisure Suit Larry, I could play Leisure Suit Larry on an emulator on my modern day IBM or Lenovo ThinkPad. I could do that. But for me, part of the experience is the actual hardware that was used. And I have a stockpile of SCSI drives that I can choose from that actually do work. I think that stockpile is dwindling almost to nothing, but I do have several drives that still function that have been tested and vetted out. I also know why they fail. Would you like to know why they fail? I'll tell you why they fail. One of the failure modes, one of the common failure modes, and this is an age issue, not an abuse or use issue. They're all susceptible to this, depending on the manufacturer of the drive and how it's constructed. But there is a rubber bumper that the head stack assembly rests against when it's parked. And that little rubber bumper, like most rubbers from that time period, tends to become soft and sticky like a chewing gum. When they're new, they're firm and they're bouncy. But as they get older, they get sticky. And that head stack assembly can get stuck to it. And there's not enough power in the voice coil to overcome that stiction. That's one failure mode that I've seen. And that's what happened to my compact portable that we just showed you. With the compact portable, I was able to disassemble the drive. It's a very crude, very small drive from way back. And I was able to make that. I figured out the original dimensions of that bumper. And I made a new one out of, would you believe it? Shrink tubing. I made a new bumper out of shrink tubing. And almost 2 years later, it still works. So I did something right. But the Connor peripherals and the Quantum Fireballs and LC Pro drives that went into these machines, it doesn't seem to work. The drives are a little more sensitive to being disassembled, and I just don't have the right environment to get the job done. That's one failure mode. The other failure mode that I found is, and I believe it is an issue with the logic control board, but that can be unpredictable at times. So you might be tempted to put a SCSI to, whatever is popular these days, converter into these machines, and that's totally fine. I support you. But for me, part of the challenge, and there has to be a challenging aspect to collecting anything, and that is either the rarity, trying to find the perfect item, trying to find, the holy grail. And, but part of that is keeping these alive. And for me, that's the appeal. The repair. The acquisition is just part of that challenge. But then you've got the repair. What does it need? What do I need to make it work? And one of the things I've found over the years, and this is true for all compact Macs and all Apple products actually, made after the SE. I don't think the Mac SEs and the Pluses have this problem, and the Apple IIs do not have this problem. But the Macintosh LC, Performa, Classic, some of the PowerBook models. I've had to do this on some PowerBooks too. But the Surface, let me show you what it is. So this right here is a working LC2 logic board. This one actually, is this the one? I think this one does work. I've got a couple of them. And I'm going to need one of these pretty soon. I can't wait to show you that. I got 2 projects coming, and I've got to finish this one. So there's going to be some computer content. This is just a precursor. All right. So right here I've got 2 LC logic boards. I have recapped both of these, and that is what we're going to talk about. So these little metal caps, these capacitors right here, these are what fail on these boards. And they fail, it's guaranteed to fail. This is a GTF repair. Guaranteed to fail. And it usually occurs probably after the machine's 25th birthday. Maybe 20th birthday. I started seeing this phenomenon take place on the Classics fairly early on. What happens on the symptom on the Classics is when you turn them on, this one's also got one of my spinning rust hard drives. You'll hear that term, spinning rust. That's because they use iron oxide as the recording media, which is rust. But this one here, it would come up with a checkerboard pattern. So if you find yourself the Classic 2 or the Mac Classic that you grew up with in high school or middle school, and it comes up to a checkerboard pattern and somebody on Facebook wants $250 for it, well, here's the thing. The problem is capacitor failure. And it is so common on these that literally anyone you find for sale today that has not already had this procedure done, it will need it done. Guaranteed. And it's easy to do. You'll love that. It's easy to do. All you've got to do is identify, and there are lists online, you can find them if you know where to look, but you want to find the closest equivalent value for each of these capacitors, and you've got to replace them. You can use a hot air station. I think when I do my next one, I'm going to use a hot air station. But you want to pull these off. This one's actually missing one. This is the one I recapped, but I could not get the microphone to work. The mic port doesn't work. I couldn't do it. I think the other board, let's take a look at this one. I think I redid this board too. I ended up needing a capacitor for another machine, so I yanked it off of this board. But has this one been done yet? It looks like it has. I see some telltale flux marks on it. Maybe not. Maybe not. But for my next project, oh yeah, this one's been done. I can see some flux there. What happens is, all right, these little cans are filled with a, I think it's paper, and there's an electrolyte, like a liquid electrolyte inside each cap. And over time, the seals between the aluminum can and the plastic base fail. It causes the electrolyte to leak out gradually. And that electrolyte is conductive, and it causes some weird stuff to happen. On the classics, for example, the way the motherboard is situated, the first thing to get hit, there are two things that get hit on the classics. I believe the RAM controller, or one of the, I forget, I don't know what the chip's called, but it hits the RAM first because it's on a slope. That electrolyte oozes down, and what's it going to do? It's going to wipe out or cause memory issues. On this classic right here, it took out the floppy controller. So the machine would work, it would boot up, the floppy controller didn't work, and the audio circuit didn't work. So there was no system sound and no floppy. And then after a while, after playing with it a bit, the hard drive controller went out. So what you do is, now this is where the there's an old myth that you can just take the board out of your Mac Classic and put it in the dishwasher. Believe it or not, that's not as bad of an idea as it sounds. Just do not use detergent. Don't use detergent. That's the trick. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the board, you're going to run it through the dishwasher, and while it's still hot, take it out of the dishwasher and put it on the counter and let it cool. The heat will cause the water to evaporate. Wait a day or two to be safe, put it back in the machine, and if it works, you've not fixed the problem, but you've diagnosed it. Here's why. The electrolyte is conductive. So when if the capacitor has just enough electrolyte to have some capacitance left, it will function. But the electrolyte that's spilled out of it, it has to be dealt with because it's causing short circuits, random short circuits, and it could affect the machine in a number of ways. By running the machine's motherboard through a dishwasher, you wash away the electrolyte. You haven't fixed the root problem, but you've removed the conductive film that's on the board. So if the machine works 100%, there's a really good chance that a proper recap job will fix it permanently. Well, at least for the next 10 to 15 years. So, there you go. We just delved into a complete crash course in Mac collecting, but that is what I have experienced. I have recapped every classic Mac I own, and even some I no longer own. And that has solved every problem they've had, except for this one, or this one. One of these two boards has no microphone functionality at all. And that's likely because the electrolyte that leaked out shorted the wrong pins and caused caused damage to the chip. What I have not done is I have not removed the audio chip, which I believe is one of these. Maybe I did. I think I removed one of the audio chips and kind of swapped it between another. Yeah, this is the one right here. I took this chip off, and I think I swapped it out, or tried to, and it still didn't work. So there's damage further down the line. This is the processor, by the way. Are these classic 2s? 608030, 68020. This is an LC2. This, I believe, is an LC3. Yeah, I believe that's it. Yeah, so this, I believe, is my LC3 board. But anyway. Oh no, it says it right here, LC2. Are they both LC2s? No, the LC2 has a 68020. Okay. Interesting. I thought the LC3 had the 68030. Now, in my defense, I've forgotten a lot about wait a minute. This is an LC. This is an original LC. You know how I can tell? Okay, I'm sorry guys. I'm sure the comments are blowing up right now. This has 2 floppy headers. That's the difference. The LC had 2 floppy headers. The LC2 had 1. And it was the 68040 that's in the LC3. Okay, now that we've gotten through that. Buy enough vintage Macs and spend enough time on the forums and you too will have those discussions with people online. How do I identify my machine's motherboard? Oh, well, do you have 2 floppy controllers or 1? They are universal. They are interchangeable, though. This board, this LC board, will fit in an LC3 chassis. The LC3s and the LC2s are identical, chassis-wise. You can see the motherboard mounts are the same. The header positions are almost the same. You'll notice that the LC does not have a microphone port. There's another one right there. Oh, wait, no, it used to. Oh, yeah, it used to. I took it off. But, yeah, that's what I did. Yes, yep, okay. It's all coming back to me. This one's got a microphone that's been replaced port from this board. But this is the fun. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is what makes collecting vintage PCs and Macs and Commodores and Apples so fun. Now, I'm going to just say this. If you are watching this video and you're wondering, and you're doing research, what kind of machine do I collect? What do I buy? I want to start in this wonderful hobby, and I have some basic soldering skills. I've got some, I've got some knowledge. I know how to use DOS. Well, and you want to know what to buy. Well, let me tell you, you can do worse than an Apple II. Hear me out. The Apple IIs. Oh, here's one right here. This is the Apple II GS. It is the premier. This is the peak. This is peak Apple right here. This is the pinnacle of the Apple line. After this, they broke the mold. They went full Mac. As a matter of fact, these machines are usually 100% reliable until they're not. Hold on. I think I might have a loose monitor connector in the back. That's happened before. Let me just check the connections in the back here. No, huh? My whole point here was to show you just how reliably awesome these are. Let's restart it. Shit. Hold on. See? It's fun, isn't it? Oh, you know what? It's the vertical hold. Or horizontal hold. Oh, yeah, there we are. Okay. Oh, yeah. There we go. I think what's happening with this monitor is my, this has happened twice already, actually. The, let's see here. I think what's happening with this monitor is probably a couple of things, but the potentiometers in the back, I think they're getting a little dirty. And that's where what I'm going to do next time this happens is I'm going to pull it apart and I'm going to spray some contact cleaner in each of those pots in the back. I think that's what's happening to it. Anyway, so the Apple II GS is the peak Cadillac machine that Apple created for the Apple II line. It was kind of like the swan song of the Apple product line, and it was revered by schools. It was a great home computer. It had better graphics than the Mac ever did at the time. But Apple deliberately crippled these machines because they didn't want it to become the next hot product. Apple, as a company, did not want the Apple II to succeed in the future. They wanted to kill it, but they allowed Apple this one final attempt, this one final project to show what they could do. And it had better sound, it had better graphics than the Mac, but it was deliberately crippled from the get-go. It could have been a better machine than the Mac in many ways, but Apple would not allow that. All of its disk drives are external. It has no hard drive. Apple never officially released a hard drive for the 2GS. To my knowledge, please correct me if I'm wrong. I think there might have been a way to use the Mac profile drive with these. There were third-party drives available, but it did not have a SCSI interface, so you couldn't just plug in a SCSI Mac drive. Nope, not going to happen. I'm going to center that screen a bit. So the Apple II GS is the one that I would buy if I were shopping for a vintage computer right now and I wanted something fun. I'd buy a 2GS, and I'm not alone in this, and that's why these are selling for stupid money. Absolutely insane. The prices people are getting for these is just crazy. Over $1,000 in some cases, depending on condition and what is included with it. But ideally, you want to get yourself an Image Writer 2. Sorry, you're going to have at least one 3.5-inch and one 5.25-inch floppy drive, and get yourself set up with a copy of ADT Pro and some cables, and you can have a lot of fun with a 2GS. But the other products to go for are the more iconic Apple products. The Apple IIe, which is basically the greatest hits of the Apple II in one bundle. And the Apple IIc, which is a compact version of the IIe with the most popular add-ons built in. It has 2 serial ports, floppy port, composite, and whatever format the Apple II display. The Apple IIc primarily uses the composite display output, just like its brothers, the 2e, the 2 Plus, the 2, the original Apple II. But there was a special display that only the 2C got, that plugs into a special port in the back. Those are hard to find. Those are worth big bucks if you can find one. It's a little LCD thing. But honestly, if I were looking to dip my toes into the waters of vintage computer collecting, the Apple II is the one that I prefer. Another one to go for is the Commodore 64s. The Commodore 64 and the Commodore 128s had a long-standing cult-like status. And to this day, you can still build a brand new Commodore 64 using off-the-shelf parts that are available to anyone who wants them. There is so much software available for not only the 64 but the Apple II line that it's just you will keep yourself busy for months, years, just exploring what these machines can do. The Macintoshes are fun, but with the exception of the earlier models, they're just... Let me rephrase that. The earlier model Macs, the Mac 128, the 512, the Plus, they were very limited machines. There wasn't as much software written for them as the later models when multimedia started to hit the Apple scene, or the Mac scene. The LC series and its Performa 200 or Performa 400 companion, they were great machines for what they were. You fit them with an external CD-ROM drive. I got 2 of them right there. Those are the CD-ROM drives that would have been sold with the LC series. And the Mac, probably the Mac Color Classics, and some of the compact Macs. But anyway, you can fit these with external CD-ROM drives, and you can have a nice little early multimedia Apple machine or Mac machine at your fingertips. But honestly, if I were just a budding collector and I wanted simple, I wanted something reliable that isn't going to blow up in my face, that's what I'm going to get. I have a 2C as well, and the 2C is just as fun as the 2GS because the software is a lot simpler, and there's so much of it that'll run on the 2C. It's crazy. My 2C has a very rare memory expansion that I got brand new in the box. One of my viewers sent it to me. That was really cool. And so mine's got 384K. This one, I think this one's got about 1 or 2 megabytes. But the thing about the Apple IIs is that the software generally isn't memory hungry. So, you know, there's not a lot to... You don't need to cram them full of memory. You don't need to go nuts with the expansions unless you really want to. But the 2GS is, there it is. True to Apple form, the early Apple form, it is expandable. Let's take a look. Voila. So they're generally fairly easy to crack open. But as you can see, there's tons of expansion here. That just isn't being used. That's a shame. This is the memory expansion card that I installed on this one. Didn't have that when I bought it. Actually, I didn't buy this when it was given to me. I got lucky. Notice something odd about this. So this is an Apple 2GS board, but it's got a keyboard connector on it. Why do you think that is? Well, I'll tell you why. It also has another power plug right over here for an old style power supply. These earlier 2GS boards were designed to be used in the 2E. There was once upon a time, Apple was really into selling upgraded options for older product users. And at one point, you could bring your early Mac 128 or Mac 512, bring it to the Apple dealer, and they will sell you an upgrade kit. Because what Apple would do is they would provide some form of backwards and forwards compatibility within their chassis, or in their logic boards. So, for example, if you swap out from a Mac 128, the original Mac, you can install a Mac Plus logic board in that chassis. All you've got to do is replace the logic board and the rear shell from a Mac Plus. So Apple would sell you for a significantly reduced price. They would sell you and install the parts needed, because it was not a customer service item, a customer installable item. You just bring your 128 to the dealer, and they would upgrade it to a Mac Plus. What they would do is they would swap out your logic board, your rear shell, and they would, I believe, that was the basic package, and then you could go up from there. So the original Mac 128 had a 400K floppy drive. And what they would do is, if you opted for this option, you could have that replaced, the internal drive replaced with an 800K drive like the Mac Plus. Or you could just plug in an external 800K drive and just have the 400K drive internally. Other options included the extended keyboard that the Mac Plus offered, which had a numeric keypad built in. And that was the mindset Apple once had. They really cared about their customer and the longevity of their equipment. But another option is, if you had an Apple IIe, you could bring your 2E to the dealer, and they would sell you a Mac or an Apple 2GS logic board with all the fixings, and you could pop that right in. That's what this keyboard header's for. That's if you have an Apple 2GS. Now, as a budding new collector, you're going to find these machines in the wild. And, well, let me put this cover back on. I'll tell you a bit about those. Can never find the power switch. Yeah, it's doing it again. Alright, let's fiddle with that control again. Okay, which one was it? It was my Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that chances are it's the horizontal position, not horizontal hold. The horizontal position control knob is, I think it's dirty. Yeah. So we might have to go in and I'm going to spray some contact cleaner in there. What am I going to use? I'm going to use my Deoxit in the small, tiny little pump can, and I'm going to clean that up. That should fix it. It's possible that this monitor could need an entire cap job. I'm going to have to look into it. It's worth doing, because these monitors are very hard to come by in working conditions. So, what I wanted to talk to you about is the Convertimax and the converted Macs and the converted Apples. So in the wild, you're going to come across these machines that sometime in the 1980s, the original owner or second or third owner brought them into the dealer and said, I can't afford a new Mac Plus or a new Apple IIgs. What can you do to beef up my, my 2E or my Mac 128 or 512? And they're going to say, well, sir, ma'am, we can sell you this upgrade package, and basically you keep your original computer, the serial number doesn't change, and you just, boom, now you've got a Mac Plus. Well, the problem is, see, back in those days, these machines weren't collector's items. They were just computers, and they had no real value outside of what their purpose was in life. And and the original owners paid a lot of money for them, so they want them to be around a little longer. So it was a great idea, for Apple to offer these solutions. But, when Uncle Rico or Aunt Sue packs up their old Mac or their old Apple II into its original boxes and puts it in the attic, and then, the grandkids or the nephew or the niece, discovers these items 20, 30 years later, they say, wow, Uncle Rico, it looks like you got an original Mac 128. And Uncle Rico says, yeah, I bought that back in 1982 when I was playing football in high school or whatever. And you start playing with this old machine, and then you find out, wow, these are, or let's just say it's an Apple, or let's say it's a Mac 128. Now, a Mac 128, or the original Macintosh, is worth a lot of money. I remember them selling for over $1,000. And I don't know what they're worth today, but they're worth a lot because they're the first Mac ever made. So that and the Mac 512 is another one, too. Not worth as much. It's kind of like the Mac 512 is like silver and the 128 is gold, if you want to compare the two. But anyway, the Mac 128 or the 512, they have significant resale value today. So you decide, well, Uncle Rico says, you can have that old piece of junk, I'm going to throw it away. So you bring it home and you clean it up, and you put it turns out it still works because they were so well built. And then you start to think about selling it. Well, you put it up for sale, somebody buys it, you get $1,200 for it or something like that. Well, you're going to get a very angry buyer, because here's the thing. An original Mac is only original once. And the thing is, those modified machines, they served a purpose. They got the job done. They were tools in their day. Now you're looking at a collector's item. The problem is that Mac 128 is no longer a 128. It's a Mac Plus. Mac Pluses don't have that much value comparatively. Well, they do. Maybe they do now. But, 5-10 years ago, you couldn't give them away. An original Mac 128 is an oddity. It's a unique piece of machinery that is part of it has, a pedigree, it has heritage. It's the original Mac. It's the first Mac. But sadly, the Mac Plus that it's become, well, it's not the same. Because that Mac 128 no longer says Macintosh on the back. It now says Macintosh Plus. And it no longer has its 400K floppy drive. That's been tossed out 30 years ago. It no longer has its Mac 128 keyboard. That was also lost with time. It no longer has its Mac 128 logic board. Probably scrapped 35 years ago. What have you got? Well, you've got a Mac 128 chassis and CRT. That's it. That's all you got. You might even have the original boxes. What's it worth? Good question. Because they're really, I don't know, and if anybody wants to chime in, any collectors want to chime in on this, what would you classify it as? It's not a Mac Plus and it's not a Mac 128. What is it? It's a bastard. That's what it is. It's a bastard. And it doesn't mean it's junk, but to a collector, you're either looking for a Mac Plus or a Mac 128. It's kind of like when Uncle Rico took his 1970 Pontiac Tempest and put GTO badges, a GTO engine, and GTO fenders on it. It's neither a Tempest or a it's still a Tempest, but if you're looking to buy a Tempest, you don't want that. You want a real one. And if you're looking for a GTO, well, it's not a GTO. You know, it's kind of rough because I actually legitimately ended up with one of these. And that's why I'm telling you this story from my perspective, because it happened to me. Although I didn't pay crazy money for the machine. A collector friend of mine, someone I know locally, he had a Mac 512 that belonged to his uncle. And I made a few videos of this machine, and when he had it, when he was all happy to show this thing. He's like, wow, look at this, the Mac 512. He's got the original boxes. He's got the keyboard. He got everything for it. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. The Mac 512s, now they actually do have value. They are, when you can't find a 128, they're a poor man's Mac 128 because they're newer. They're not as hard to find, but they're hard enough to find that they actually have significant value to a collector. And one in the original boxes, oh my God, you've got a gold mine there. Let's see if our 2GS is coming back to life. I might have to pull that monitor apart and fix it. Let's see what we got. Yeah, I'm going to have to do something with it. It could be bad caps. I'm going to have to do some research. Where was I? Oh yes, we were talking about the Mac 128 512 conundrum. So he ended up deciding to get rid of this Mac 512, and because he was trying to clean up his collection, and it didn't really have much value to him anymore. So I ended up buying this thing from him for a pittance. I mean, I know what it's worth. He knows what it's worth. But he just said, you know what? I don't need this thing, and I don't want to deal with eBay, so why don't you just give me, I think it was $100, and get it off my hands. So I said, okay, fine. No worries. So I brought it home. I'm playing with this thing, and I'm like, wait a minute. This thing has too much memory. And I'm like, wait a minute. This thing has a SCSI port in the back. Oh, wait. Did the... Yeah, I think the Plus had SCSI in the back. I'm like, wait a minute. This thing's not a Mac 512 at all. Turns out it was a Mac Plus. But it had a Mac 128 serial number. It had a Mac 128 chassis. But it was a Mac Plus. So I tried selling it. I didn't need it. I was also at a point where I didn't really need to collect stuff, and I was trying to clean house for a while, and I tried to sell it, and I couldn't find a buyer. What do you sell it as? You know, it's not really worth what a Mac 128 or a Mac 512 is worth. and it's not a pure plus anymore. It's not a. It's just a bastard. So watch out for those. When somebody's trying to sell you a Mac 128 or a 512, and you heard through the grapevine that those are two very valuable Macs to collect, you're right, they are. But make sure it's what it originally was. You want to be careful. You don't want to jump on one of those and find out that oh my god, it's been upgraded. But I will say that an Apple IIe with a 2GS logic board, that does sound kind of cool. They do exist. I haven't seen one yet, but they exist. And if you look hard enough, you'll find one. Now I'm kind of pissed off that my 2GS needs work. That was my reliable machine. That's old reliable right there. But it might need a cap job. Chances are. But like I said, stuff like that is easy to do. Some basic tools and a little bit of patience. You can get a logic board recapped, but CRTs are even easier because they're all through-hole solder. But you just got to watch out for the high voltage because it bites. Well, this video's gone on long enough. Thank you for watching. I'm not sure what I'm going to title this one because it kind of went off on a tangent, but stay tuned for cool content. It's coming your way. We got 3 machines we're going to deal with. We've got this old Commodore. I've got the secret machine that's coming that we won't really talk about. I'll tell you what the third one is. The third machine is going to be an LC2. But not just any LC2. It has a really interesting story behind it. And I can't wait to show you that. It should be here in a week or so. And yeah, it's going to be fun. So stay tuned. U62. We've got the content.